and thanks for joining me for another episode of Turn Up the Love Live. I am Sarah Pettis. I am a body positive intuitive eating coach and the founder of turnupthelove.ca, and my mission is to help serial dieters to ditch the diet cycle, reconnect with food, and come home to their bodies by using the power of self-love. And today we're going to be wrapping up the last and final episode on triggers. So for the entire month of November, we've been diving into a whole lot of trigger talk. And if you've missed any of the past episodes from this month, you can actually re-listen to all of them on turnupthelove.ca, so you can check them out there. But before we wrap things up for this month, I actually really wanted to talk about the very reason behind why I actually even started talking about triggers and why I think it's so incredibly important for this journey. And really what it all comes down to is that uncovering your triggers can actually help you to reconnect with food. So if you haven't already realized that, I'm here to tell you why triggers are so incredibly important to explore if you want to reconnect with food and feel complete food freedom. Okay, so we're also going to be diving into some awesome subjects such as how to explore your triggers and how exploring your triggers actually helps you to pay attention and really get present with yourself, which is a pretty hard thing to do in this day and age where we're called from all different directions, right? We're also going to be talking about that when you do uncover your triggers, how that's actually going to allow you to expose the boldest truth of all. And I'll give you a hint what this bold truth is. It is not about the food. Okay, so just a little sneaky hint there for you. And then also we're going to be chatting about why we specifically, people who have been struggling with food and have had this disconnected relationship with eating and your body, why we have been chosen to embark on this food journey for a reason. Okay? Why we've been going through this, and it's all for a reason. So we're going to be exploring all of that today and probably so much more. So thank you again for joining me. I think you're really going to love this episode. I think it's going to really help you to get clear and sort of sum all of this trigger talk information up, okay? So if you are joining me live, thank you so much for joining live. If you want to hit me up in the comments and let me know where you're tuning in from and that you're here, I would love to hear from you. But I'm going to get started by starting this conversation off with a question, like I usually do, because I think it's a really good way to open things, right? So the question that I wanted to start with was, what has been your greatest takeaway or a lesson, greatest takeaway or lesson that you've learned about your own triggers and your relationship with food so far? So what is the greatest takeaway or lesson that you've learned? It could be a simple word, it could be a sentence, but what is the greatest takeaway that you've learned from this journey, from going through these episodes week after week about triggers? I would love to know. And I'm going to share a little bit about what kind of came up for me, because I learned a great deal as well. So when I first started to explore my own triggers, I couldn't believe the information that was coming up for me, right? And it wasn't just about my relationship with food either, but it also was information about me as a whole, my entire being, right? Not just my relationship with food. And I also learned that triggers come really in all different shapes and sizes and forms, and there's just so many different ways that triggers can appear in your life, and it's going to look really different for everyone. But the biggest thing that I learned was that ultimately they all came down, every single trigger, whether it was a behavioral trigger, whether it was an environmental trigger, whether it was an emotional trigger, And if you want to know more about those triggers, like I said, you're going to want to go back and explore the second episode, which is all about the 5 different types of triggers. But regardless of what trigger was going on, what they all had in common is that they all ultimately came down to the thoughts behind these triggers. And it was those thoughts that could be changed. If only I showed up and I took back my power, I started to challenge them. All right. And that insight right there was so incredibly exciting for me. That was a game changer in this whole food freedom journey. It was that I had to take back my own power if I wanted to heal my relationship with food and my body, right? And I was excited also because I learned that no matter how disconnected or destructive my behaviors were around food, I knew that I could eliminate this. And I want you to know that same truth as well, okay? And that's why today I'm going to be sharing the greatest lessons and teachings that I've learned from uncovering my own triggers and how I was able to get to the bottom of all of this and take that giant step forward into healing my relationship with food, okay? So I'm just going to jump into the comments really quick before we get started. We have a comment in from Rochelle. Thanks for joining, Rochelle. She's a part of the Turn Up the Love Insiders group. And she says that my greatest takeaway has been that I am mindful now about when I eat and why I am eating. Yes, so that is so incredibly mega. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that today, Rochelle, of course. You're so super in tune. But it's the mindfulness behind it, right? You almost stop to think about, okay, why am I doing this? Am I eating this food out of pleasure, or am I eating this food out of comfort? Am I eating this food because I'm bored? So it's really starting to have that intellect and dialogue with yourself. And like Rochelle said, being mindful about what you're doing before you just go and do it, right? So it really starts to build that connection with self. So that's amazing. If that is the only thing you've taken away from all that, like, that is huge, Rochelle. That is like massive. So well done. That's really great. Silva's here as well, all the way from Germany. Thank you for joining, Silva. She's also a member of Turn Up the Love Insiders. Thanks for watching, honey. So Silva's actually learned that there are different types of triggers. And you can find that in episode number 2 on turnupthelove.ca. And that's really helped her to become more aware of them and your patterns. Good. So awareness from both of you, which is so incredibly awesome. And like I said, we're going to get into that. Okay. So this is really great. Thank you, girls, for both sharing. So just to recap before we get started, we're going to be diving into how exploring your triggers helps you to pay attention and get present with yourself, like Rochelle said, like Silva said. So it's really getting that presence going on and that mindfulness. We're also going to be diving into exposing the boldest truth of all when it comes to uncovering your triggers, what really comes up here. And again, the hint is it's not about the food. So maybe start thinking about what this topic might be about. And then lastly, we're going to dive into why you specifically have been chosen to embark on this food disconnected to reconnect journey. Okay, so let's get into it because I got a lot I gotta say, as per always, but I really want to make sure that we have this open conversation. So let's get started, okay? So first and foremost, the way that triggers actually help you and uncovering your triggers actually help you to reconnect with food is that by exploring your triggers, this is going to help you to pay attention and get present with yourself, okay? Just like the girls had mentioned. So let's be honest, okay? Let's just be honest. We know by now, we're all super smart cookies. We know by now how easy it is to become disconnected in our everyday lives, right? We know that it's super easy to become disconnected in our everyday lives, especially when all of our attention is being pulled in like every direction, like all the time, right? Whether it's email or text messages or boss's demands or the dog needing to go out for a walk or whatever it is, the list is just like never ending, right? And I mean, this world that we're living in, it's just spinning, like literally it's just spinning, and it's having us live in this constant state of disconnect, right? So whether you're disconnecting with things such as TV or drugs, alcohol, sex, food, whatever, these are all external distractions from your internal world, right? But how often are you actually taking the time to tune in and to see what's kind of going on for you energetically, right? How often are you actually taking the time to do that, right? Because we all know that we're extremely disconnected. Like I said, we're super smart. I think we're starting to get it. We all know that we're super disconnected. But the problem is we're not taking that time to actually reconnect, right? So how often would you say that you're consciously reconnecting to yourself? Is this something that's new? Is this something you've never even thought of? Is this something that, you try to carve out maybe once a week on the weekends? It's something you do every morning. Hit me up in the comments and let me know how often you're consciously trying to reconnect to yourself. Okay? Because by consciously carving out time in our day to pay attention and take notice to what your triggers are, when you actually show up in that way, the truth is you are holding space for yourself to be present. Right? By showing up to watch these videos, by showing up to complete the Uncover Your Triggers workbook, by exploring and journaling about these triggers, right? This is you holding space for yourself to be present and get to the bottom of what it is that's going on. But if you're constantly using other distractions to sort of, not think about it, you're never going to get to the root of it. It's just going to be like a friggin' beach ball, and it's just going to keep popping up. No matter how much you keep trying to shove it down, it will just keep coming up, right? And that's why I love the idea of exploring triggers, because they really help you to get clear and get present about what it is that's going on, okay? So if you haven't already started using the Uncover Your Triggers workbook that I've created, I think it's a really great way to get started. Okay, maybe one of the girls who are watching live, either Silva or Rochelle, I think both of you have the workbook. Would you be able to pop in the comments a link to it? For me, that would be awesome. But yeah, it's a really, really great way to get started, okay? If you haven't yet started to explore that, okay? So am I right if by exploring your triggers, you've been able to get into this space of self-exploration, right? Am I right by saying that? So again, how often are you specifically taking time out of your day to see what's no longer working for you anymore? How often are you getting conscious about what's bothering you? How long have you been burying these feelings of discomfort by using food to self-soothe? So share in the comments what your experience has been, or you can hit me up with a GIF as well, and you can kind of describe the experience. So I have some answers from some of the girls here. So Rochelle says she's been working on it since May, and she really has, Rochelle's been someone who's been hanging out in my space for a little while now, and I can confidently say that Rochelle continues to show up. And it's been a really amazing journey to witness. I'm so proud of you, Rochelle. You're constantly exploring, you're constantly dialing in, and always wanting to be the best version of yourself. And that truly is beautiful. So well done. Silva says several times daily. And I mean, girl, that is dedication. That is amazing that you're consciously tuning in all the time. And I'm sure that because you've consciously made that a non-negotiable in your life, that exploring this trigger work was probably not as scary as it could be for some who aren't used to exploring their emotions in this way. Am I right about that? So I'm really proud of both of you. You've done an amazing job. And for anyone who does watch the replay of this, I would love to hear as well what your experience has been with trying to make time to consciously tune in, okay? That would be really, really great. So that's the first thing, okay? That's the first thing, is that by learning to uncover your triggers, or by showing up to uncover your triggers, you are really going to start to pay attention and get present with yourself, which is ultimately going to give you a lot of answers, okay? And that's really going to bring us to the next point that I wanted to mention here. Okay, and the next point I wanted to mention here is that when you actually show up to identify and nail down these triggers, you're going to quickly realize that it really is not about the food. This is not about the food at all, is it? So let me ask, so from exploring your relationship with food, have you uncovered any new information about yourself that may not even pertain to food? By exploring and looking at these triggers, have you uncovered some new information about yourself? If so, hit me up in the comments and let me know what your experience has been. Because it's really interesting, isn't it? You know, when we think about hunger, we think that we think like, okay, hunger is like our bellies are grumbling, right? They're wanting to be fed. We're looking to be nourished, like we were when we were little kids. Like we're just, you know, our little baby bellies, and we're like, we're crying, and I need the food now, right? That's what we think about when we think of hunger, right? However, what we need to actually be finding out is what we're actually really hungry for, okay? So when we're experiencing feelings of hunger, is it that we're actually hungry? Are you actually in tune with what your hunger cues are? Do you know when you're actually feeling hungry? Or is it that you're really hungry for more? Okay? So when you explore your triggers, it allows you to uncover what you're not getting from your life. It allows you to uncover what you're not getting from your environment, your relationships. It is showing you what isn't filling you up anymore, okay? And ultimately, that's chances are why you could be turning to food and why you could be overeating. It's because you're not feeling that joy, that fullness from anything else. So you gravitate towards the food, right? But when we quit putting the blame on food, and we quit saying things like, I shouldn't eat this, or I got into these treats at night, or stop being like, the food. When we stop putting the blame on the food, we're actually able to then take back our own power. Okay? You guys following me here? Send me some hearts or some love or some likes if you're following me here, if you get what I'm talking about. Because when we stop putting the blame on the food and we take back our own power, we realize that our cravings, what we're craving for, is actually here to tell us something, okay? It's actually here to give us some answers as to things that we need to explore. So really, food is not the problem, okay? Food is not the problem. It really is just the symptom that something deeper is going on. Something deeper is going on that we need to be exploring, okay? And that really brings me to the last and final point, okay? But before I get into that, I'm going to read a little bit about what this experience has been for the women who have shown up to explore their triggers so far. So Sylvia has said, sometimes I judge myself because I am disconnected so often. But then I climb to better thoughts about that, and I'm aware of the process, and that awareness about the disconnection is the very first step. Boom, baby. Boom. Preach it, sister. Yes, awareness absolutely is the first step, like Silva said. She's 100% right. Even if you haven't gotten to the extremeness of, okay, this is exactly the very thing that has triggered me. This is exactly why I'm feeling disconnected from food, and really narrowing it down. Just having a little bit of awareness of, okay, I'm noticing that whenever I'm feeling lonely, I'm diving into an entire bag of cookies. That right there is going to have you start to pay attention, because once you know that that loneliness does that, the next time that you're lonely and you catch yourself in a bag of cookies, you're like, oh, wait a second, I'm being triggered here. And the more and more that you do that, the more and more that you start to go, okay, this is a repeating pattern in my life. How can I work with this? Right? So I love that you said that by just showing up and, having that awareness, that's really going to create that first step into understanding the disconnection. So that's a really, really good point there. That's a really good point. And then Rochelle says, I know as a child we were very poor and food was scarce. So I have found that when I overeat as a teenager, the base feeling was fear. It changed as I got older, but that is the base of it all. So for me, food is about control. Oh my God. See, you got holy smokes. That is a huge revelation. That is a huge, Rochelle, that is a huge revelation. The fact that you feel that you want to control your foods because it wasn't something that was obtainable to you when you were younger, that is a whole other level of awareness, right? And just by you showing up to do your triggers, you've probably felt like, wow, you're aware of this now, just like Silva, where you can catch yourself when you are starting to control your foods, or maybe you're starting to weigh yourself on the scale, or maybe you're starting to measure out your foods again. You're kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm going back into these control tendencies. Right? And I'm going back to these triggering thoughts, because remember, that's ultimately what triggers all come down to, that they all have in common, is the thinking process behind why we do what we do with food. And you can kind of catch yourself and be like, okay, I want to create a different action. So what is something I can do here instead of falling back into those old same patterns? So amazing. You girls are amazing. So incredibly impressed. Honestly, you guys are inspiring me every single day. Incredible, incredible. So there you go, right? So when you are identifying your triggers, you're realizing it's not about the food. It's actually about situational things or thoughts or past experiences that are causing you to have this disconnected relationship with food. And when you can take back your power and take the ownership off of pointing the finger at the food, and take the ownership and put it on yourself, and just kind of say, okay, this is something that I have control over, you realize I have control of healing my relationship with food, which is so exciting. So well done. I'm really proud of you girls. So finally, before we wrap things up, I wanted to really mention that the reason why showing up to work through your triggers is so incredibly important in helping you to reconnect with food is because triggers, they really help you to shine a light on what still needs to be healed within yourself, okay? And this is often why, if you are someone who has been struggling with food, if you are someone who has continued to diet over and over and over again, if you are someone who has tried to control your foods, if you are someone who feels guilty about what you're eating, if you're someone who is shameful about the way that you look, then the good news here is that you've been put on this journey to deal with something that you still need to heal. There are no coincidences in this world at all. And we're always given lessons based on what we need to heal within ourselves. And they come in very funny ways, in ways that we might not even realize. But from my past experience, someone who has been overweight, someone who used to like mistreat my body with garbage food and food that was overly processed and didn't put any intention behind what I was eating, to someone who was an extreme health nut and very restricted and punishing and hard on myself, I can now say that through all of that, I've learned so much about exploring it and about myself. And now I'm able to show up in the world and help others to do it. So I know that that all served a purpose. And it is the same for you too. And it may not be in the same way that it is for me, but I promise you it is there to shine a light on something that still needs to be healed. Okay? So tell me, if you have been working through your triggers with me, would you also say that you've uncovered a great deal about yourself? Yes or no, hit me up in the comments. Have you also learned a great deal about yourself from exploring triggers? Because, like I was saying, through this journey, we're going to uncover these massive epiphany moments, right? Where these events from our past come up, like Rochelle's given a great example of, right? Where she talked about her childhood. These epiphany moments are going to come up, right? And you probably didn't even expect yourself to have to deal with them as you're kind of going through this journey. But please, please do not shut these down. Don't shut them down, okay? Welcome this discussion with an open mind, okay? And do your best to really try to listen to what you're uncovering is, like what these answers are trying to tell you, okay? Because I promise you this, what you resist will persist. Okay, let me say that again. What you resist will persist. Again, like that beach ball I was explaining, right? Every time you shove a beach ball under the water, it's going to try to shoot back up, right? It's the exact same thing with anything that we're going through in our lives. If we resist something and we're constantly like, no, I don't want to deal with it, I don't want to deal with it, like forget it, it's going to keep showing up over and over again. And sometimes if we're not getting it, it's going to come up in not so subtle ways, and then it's just going to hit us like a ton of bricks. For me, it was a head-on collision, car accident that I was in that really woke me up to be like, if something happened to you, what would you be remembered by? And for me, it was like, I don't know, staying on the perfect meal plan, working out at the gym 5-6 days a week, because that was my entire life. I had dedicated my entire life to looking a certain way, like with this extreme rigidness, right? And that car accident, unfortunately had to be a car accident, is what really shook me to my core to be like, you need to start living your life. You need to start living your life right now, okay? So remember, what you resist will persist. So it's better to just say, okay, I'm seeing this, let's dive into this, okay? And I know it's scary. I know it can be really scary. It was really scary for me too. About a year and a half ago, I was working with a client and I hadn't dived into my triggers in a little while, and it really challenged me to show up and re-explore them so I could give some examples. And it was hard for me at first because, you know, reconnecting with food and my body was still kind of new at the time, and I was just kind of like, oh, I don't want to go there, but it really helped. And it really helped because I was able to kind of get to the root of like, okay, what did I learn from all this? And that's why I was able to share this, all of these 4 weeks of trainings with you guys, right? So just remember that every single unwanted pattern or eating challenge, it really does have a lesson within it, okay? And each quote unquote bad food habit or disconnected food habit that we have, right? It's going to carry a lot of wisdom within it. It's going to hold a hidden message, right? And it's your job to take back your own power, like I said, and discover what it is that it's trying to tell you, okay? Food is your teacher. Food is here to be your teacher. It's showing up, and it's hard for you right now because there's something you need to learn here, okay? You've been embarking on this journey for actual reason. And I will tell you that you can absolutely handle it, and you can work through it, and you can guide others to do the same as well by just you simply showing up. So remember to keep showing up, okay? So Silva and Rochelle both said, yes, most definitely. They have learned a lot. They've had a bunch of epiphanies from this experience. And I think they've shared a couple of them here today as well. So it's really incredible what you can do when you do start to explore these triggers, okay? So what do you guys think? Lots to be said about showing up to do the deep work, isn't there? Right? So if you haven't already, who here is ready to explore their triggers in a deeper way? If you want to get clear on your triggers and you want to bust through blocks that have helped you in this like self-sabotage mode, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready are you? And if you're already exploring, how ready are you to keep exploring? Scale of 1 to 10. 10 being hell yeah, 1 being oh gosh, I'm so not there. Hit me up in the comments, 1 to 10. And if you have any questions about triggers, now would be a good time to ask them as well. So I have someone tuning in on Instagram here in the comments from Germany as well. Amazing. I'm from Canada. They're asking where I'm from, so I'm from Canada. So we got some 10s in the comments. Awesome. So I love that you guys continue to show up. This is amazing. It's really, really, really amazing. And if you aren't sure how to show up and you don't know what your next steps are moving forward on this journey, and if you really want to have more clarity around why, the big why, you've continued to struggle with food year after year, or you're ready to really narrow in and dive in and understand these limiting beliefs and blocks and old memories that are keeping you stuck in this disconnected eating, then I think that you would be a really, really great fit for my 2-week introductory program called Reconnect with Food. And Reconnect with Food is awesome because it's a self-study introductory course, so you can do it at your own pace. And why I created it is because I really wanted to help you to reconnect with food and your body in a deep and lasting way. And that all comes down to you showing up for yourself, okay? And it's great because it gives you a ton of guidance. It's a really safe space that you can just kind of explore and support yourself and really start to think about these negative patterns and behaviors that you need to heal from, okay? And in the program, it's a way for you to sort of dive in and uncover the patterns behind why you were self-soothing with food, okay? There's a whole section on triggers in the Reconnect with Food program. And it's gonna help you too to learn how to interpret your food cravings and listen to your own intuition when it comes to what to eat, when to eat, and how much to eat. Because gosh, I know that when I was struggling with this, it was like I literally was so confused. I was being told in every which way direction of what to do, and I was just like, I have no idea what to listen to anymore. So it really helps you to kind of get started with that, okay? So if this is really hitting home for you, then I invite you to get started. Like I said, it is an introductory course. It's only 2 weeks long, okay? And it's going to be a really, really great way for you to kind of start to move through the holiday season, feeling more in tune and connected and grounded with yourself before all of the holiday chaos begins, okay? And really start the new year off feeling like you are in charge here, not the food, not your thoughts, but you taking back your own power and you taking control of your future and your life and living a life of freedom and not feeling like chained to the rules of dieting and the diet mentality, okay? So if that sounds like something that you want to get started with, I'll be dropping a link in the comments right after this video, but you can also head over to reconnectwithfood.ca/RWF-full-offer. Reconnectwithfood.ca/RWF full dash offer. If you're watching on Instagram, if you actually just hit the link in my bio, you'll see the Reconnect with Food program there. And if you're watching on Facebook, I will be adding it into the comments shortly. So before we close off, I had a question come in from Silva. What do you do when you are triggered and want to overcome unpleasant feelings, Sarah? Good question. So feelings would be the emotional trigger, right? So when we're feeling these uncomfortable feelings, that would be the emotional trigger there, right? So when I tend to feel something that feels uncomfortable, something that I've newly allowed myself to start doing is leaning into it. I feel like so often we repel feelings that don't feel good, right? We're just like, oh, like I don't want to feel this. This feels yucky. But I think that what we've become disconnected from is the fact that life is both light and dark. We're a yin yang, right? There it is. We're a yin yang. And without the darkness, we cannot see the light. And without the light, we cannot see the darkness, okay? So when we are constantly living in this state of like, oh, I always want to be feeling good, I always want these feel good feelings, I think we're really just kind of setting us up for something that's just, it's not true. Like life was not meant to be that way. So when you are feeling feelings of discomfort or you're feeling unpleasant feelings of things that aren't feeling good for you, my recommendation, Silva, would just sit with that. Just really lean in and go, okay, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm experiencing. Writing down those feelings, getting super clear on what they are, and then having a look at, okay, what's triggered these feelings within me? Why are they coming up for me? And again, it's very similar to the food. If we're feeling uncomfortable feelings, oftentimes those feelings are coming up to show you that you have something you still need to heal or work on. So maybe you're not really ready to explore those feelings right away because they might be too painful. They might be stinging still. And at that time, I don't think it's a good idea to really like dive in and get into it. I think that it might be time for you to be gentle with yourself. Maybe you implement some self-care, but you don't try to push them down. So you allow them to be there, but maybe you get to bed early that night. You've had a rough day. You've been experiencing a lot of things. You're like, you know what? I've had a rough day. I've been feeling a lot. I'm just going to get to bed earlier tonight. Or maybe you go for a walk and you feel these feelings while you're listening to some music. You don't try to change that energy right away. Okay, so it's not about changing energy right away. It's about leaning in and saying, okay, why is this happening? What's triggered this for me? What am I experiencing? And not being afraid to know that you're going to have feelings of discomfort. You're going to have feelings of pain. It's okay. So often I think, as you start to get into spirituality and you start to get into self-work, I feel like a lot of leaders right now are really shaming the idea of unpleasant feelings. They're really shaming the idea of feeling depression and shaming the idea of feeling anxiety. And really, I'm here to say that like that is all part of the journey. And you don't always have to be in this positive light space to be doing self-work. Just because you're feeling feelings of discomfort, that does not mean that you're not on your way. I know, I'm human, you're human, and I have feelings like that all the time. It's been a really rough year for me. 2017 has been a whirlwind of a year for me. I was dealing with a lot of feelings of shame and not wanting to put myself out there and wanting to hide. So we all go through it, but instead of repelling it, I would just say to lean in a little more. Lean in a little more. Keep asking some questions and really up your self-care during that time, but don't run away from it. I hope that helps to answer your question, Silva. And if you want to talk a little bit more about it, then be sure to chat with me in the Turn Up the Love Insiders and we can dive into it a little more. Okay, but that's going to be how I close things off for you today. Again, if you want to explore this more and you want to get more into the triggers, be sure to join me inside of the Reconnect with Food 2-week introductory program. Or you can also get started with a free and simple workbook. It's called Uncover Your Triggers. I'll be putting both the links into the Facebook comments, and then again, Instagram, you can check out the link in my bio. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a really great day. It's been so enjoyable to explore these triggers with you. It sounds like you guys have gained a ton from it, so way to show up, way to be present, and way to be amazing. Continue to take back your power. You girls are so wonderful. Have an amazing day. We'll chat super soon. Bye.